The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata Basque. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I heard my colleague's speech from Barry Innisfield, who's putting the blame on the government in terms of transparency. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind my colleague that Quebec's slogan, I remember, and I'd like to remind my colleague in 2010, during the G8 summit, the former Conservative minister was accused of $50 million in corruption, Mr. Clements, for an infrastructure project in his riding. So what did we learn from the AG office in 2011? The government did not clearly or transparently say what the request for financing was. Another excerpt from the office of the AG. During my career as an AG, I have never seen a situation like this one, when there was absolutely no documentation behind this. So my question for my colleague is simple. How can a party like the Conservative Party, who wants to form the next government, how can they ensure that Quebecers and Canadians can absolutely give them their trust with such a poor track record in terms of transparency and management of public funds? The Honourable Member for Barrie. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I remember as well all the scandals from the Liberal Party in 2015.
Almost immediately with the Aga Khan scandal. Look, we can look into history all we want, Mr. Speaker, but the reality is that we've had 9 years of a government who said they were going to be different, they were going to be open and transparent and accountable by default. You know, sunshine is the best disinfectant, sunny ways. I remember it all with his hand over his heart. And what have we got? Scandal after scandal after scandal, a divided country along all those lines that I talked about earlier. We've got debt and deficit. We've got a young generation of people who have lost hope in this country. We need to restore the promise of Canada, and that's precisely what Canada's Conservatives, common sense Conservatives, are going to do, including upholding ethical standards. And if he wants any evidence of that, just look at the member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lake. Look at the bill that he's proposed and support that as a start and a signal to what our intention is going to be in the next government. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Chatham, Kent Leamington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague from Barrie Innisfil for a very clear delineation. I'm going to crawl into the DeLorean for a moment. Let's go back. We've had a number of references to the sponsorship scandal as a kind of as a marker, as a comparator. And if I recall a quote from that era from a former Liberal Cabinet Minister, David Dingwall, who stated, "I'm entitled to my entitlements." Is that what's going on here? To my honourable colleague, is this has now been extended to the government appointees, not only just to cabinet ministers and prime ministers?
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Loaded question, softball question. Hit it out of the park. I know we're in the Major League playoffs here, but I don't know what it is with these guys. It's got to be in their DNA, because we've seen scandal after scandal that's come up where Liberal-connected insiders and cronies have benefited as a result of the relationships that they have with this Liberal government. And I mentioned a few of them off the top. Probably one of the most absurd ones was former MP Frank Bayliss getting a sole source contract for hundreds of millions of dollars for ventilators that weren't even used. Sole source contract means that they didn't go and vet that out to anybody else or put it out for other bids. They gave it to Liberal-connected insiders. And we've seen these palms being greased since the beginning of this government. We saw it with the Prime Minister setting the example with his trip, the ethical violation to the Aga Khan's island. And I think it's in their DNA. I think they can't help themselves, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to breaching ethics laws and code of conduct laws in this country. They just can't help themselves, and this is why we're seeing it. And when that example is set at the top, it disseminates itself throughout the entire organization. In this case, it's disseminated itself throughout the entire part of government, and this is why we're dealing with these scandals, and it is impacting and affecting a decline in our democracy, trust in our institutions by Canadians, and we have to restore that trust, and the only way we can do it is to replace this tired, corrupt government with a common-sense conservative government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Une question très vite.
Quick question, the honourable member for Lac Saint Louis. If we talked about the DeLorean again, from 67 to today, there's been many scandals. Either it's the Liberals or the Conservatives. But let's go back now to October 2nd, 2004. My question is very simple, Mr. Speaker. Through you, why, in his opinion, what is the main reason that pushes the government to not produce the documents that have been requested today? The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
15 seconds. I think because this goes much deeper than what is on the surface. I think there are much more people implicated that are connected to this government, that are guilty of being complicit to what went on. And I think the government is afraid of the information being released and the impact that this is going to have, not just politically, but criminally as well. Thank you.